Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Honey Dijon.
Hola.
Can you describe what you're wearing today and why you chose these particular clothes?
I'm wearing what is known as a Canadian tuxedo, which is pretty much head to toe denim. I just wanted to wear something that really felt like how I like to move through the world, which is simple, but a nod to the 70s and specifically New York in the late 70s. And I've always loved that combination of denim and leather and a cowboy boot. It just reminds me of being in the urban jungle in New York. And all of my actual style inspiration comes from New York at that time. So I just chose something that really is what I pretty much wear every day, is some form of denim, whether baggy denim, slim denim, a denim jacket, but it's what I most feel comfortable in. Denim and leather and diamonds. There's tons of diamonds, but you can't see the diamonds. But yeah.
Oh, lucky I've got a diamond. And
yeah,
I've
we
got
love
denim.
The whole
We're
ear
in
is a
sync.
diamond situation, yeah.
We were talking a minute ago about our love of Cher and
Yeah.
channeling that kind of, you're beautifully channeling her some of her greatest look, my favorite era of Cher. It's
My
wonderful.
favorite Cher image is by Norman Seff, and it's her in a black silk shirt with jeans. And that image just speaks to my soul. And so now, with the availability of so many hair options, you can have your inner Cher every day. Pretty much. But yeah, I mean, Cher, Diana Ross by Scavullo, when she's wearing the Henley and Gia Karanji's jeans. There's nothing sexier than a great pair of jeans, and it's the hardest things to find. Actually, I find the simplest things are the hardest to find because it needs to really fit your body and it needs to really be lived in for it to have authenticity. So, there's nothing better than a great ass and a pair of jeans as far as I'm concerned.
Too right.
Yeah.
Well, you're one of the most successful DJs and producers in the world.
Oh,
And
thank you.
how was fashion growing up in your household? Who influenced you?
So I come from a pretty middle-class African-American family in Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago. And, a lot of my parents are post-war, grew up in the 60s and 70s. And like a lot of Black people, when your humanity is stripped from you, you express it through dress. That's how you give yourself courage and self-worth, and you value yourself when you're being oppressed or marginalized. And so fashion was always in my house. I read a lot of, there was Ebony and Jet, and if you know about Ebony Fashion Fair and things like that. And so fashion and how you presented yourself was so important. It was the way you communicated to the world. So that was my first introduction, was through my family. My second introduction was through music. I was really fortunate enough to be born at the beginning of house music culture. And like a lot of subcultures, how you dress spoke to your tribe or the community that you wanted to be a part of. So I learned about a lot of fashion from going to clubs because you had so many different style codes in house music. You had the preppy and the punk and the new wave, but you also had, the house dress code, which was riding boots and jodhpurs and some form of
Wow.
either Jean-Franco Ferré or Versace sweater. And so you would bring all of these images. Kids would come to school with Vogue, and they would come to school with Luomo Vogue, and they would come to school with all of these high fashion magazines. And these were the codes that you use to speak to people in house music culture. So that was my first real second introduction besides my parents, was the community of househeads that I grew up in Chicago. And we had a department store called Marshall Fields.
Oh, yeah.
And they used to have everyone from Willie Ware, Westwood, Gaultier, Montana.
Oh.
And so I used to go, of course I was broke. I was a kid, I had no money. That was my connection to fashion and clothing. And fashion to me has never been about aspiration. It's always been about inspiration. And I was always inspired by album covers and, nothing was separate. And that's how I sort of have based my entire career, this intersectionality between music, fashion, nightclubbing, nightlife, sex, those were all intertwined for me. And so I would have to say that my introduction to music was through my family, and that vocabulary was expanded upon by my peers in house music.
And you talked about album covers. What was the first one?
Okay.
What got into your...
The one that changed my life, today that still I can sit and look at it, Nightclubbing by Grace Jones, because it was art directed by Jean-Paul Goude. So you get into that world of graphic design and image making. And then the jacket was Giorgio Armani. So you had that connection between fashion and music. And then the hair top was by the hairstylist Christiane. And so you have all of these things swirling. And so I used to read the credits and listen to the music. And that album also changed my life because, she covered Libertango, which is this beautiful song, and then La Vie en Rose by Edith Piaf, and then Nightclubbing by Iggy Pop. And so you see how all of these things I'm starting to piece them together through that image. And so that was the first album cover for me that literally changed my life into today. She's my shaman and North Star.
I had that with Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? And I saw that when I was 5 or something and thought, this is everything. It's so intense and distilled. I love what he's wearing, the Mac.
Yeah.
He just looks so great, and it just went into my psyche. And album covers have been a big thing. And
well, music and fashion. I've always loved this quote by Malcolm McLaren. And it is the look of music and the sound of fashion. That sums it up for me. That is like the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because you talked about your love of the scene in the 70s and 80s before your time, obviously.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I was on the planet, but I wasn't hanging out.
What did you wear to the first time you DJ'd? What was your look?
The first time I DJ'd, wow. Well, okay, so the first time I considered myself a DJ was when I was 8. And now they call it a music selector, but my parents used to have basement parties, which was pretty normal in African-American households. And so they would have basement parties. And the first thing I wore when I DJ'd were my pajamas, because my mom and dad would let me play music before my bedtime at the beginning of their parties. And so that was like 8 or 9 o'clock. And then I would go to bed. But I would never go to sleep because if you know anything about basement parties, they become boisterous and loud, and the music and the laughter and the clanking of the glasses, and like you could smell the cigarette smoke coming up the stairs, wafting up the stairs. And I think that was when I fell in love with the joy and celebration and liberation of the party and the community and the communal spirit. Professionally, when I started DJing in New York, what did I wear? I think, so this is a true story. I've never told this story because I was so broke, but I had a Macy's credit card and I was eligible for a Macy's credit card. So I used to go to Macy's and charge the clothes, wear them out, make sure the tags were still intact, then dry clean them and return them. Please, I hope no one still does that because I'm giving away my secret. But anyway,
don't think you're
I used to go to Macy's and I was really, what was I into at the time? Let me really think back to what I was into. I've always been a huge fan of Norma Kamali.
Oh, yeah.
So I think my first thing that I wore was Kamali that I charged and then I took it back. There was Barney's, and then so I had a Macy's card, and then I got a Barney's charge card, and then that was, forget it. That was game over. I think my dry cleaning cost me more than the outfits. I could have bought them eventually, but you had to always have a look in New York, so you couldn't be caught dead in the same thing twice. Are you kidding? New York is brutal for that. That's the one lesson that I took from New York about culture. Is like, now we live in a culture where we have social media and the internet, right? And it's all about, I find it to be particularly, everyone is speaking, even though there's tribes, everyone's still speaking the same language. And it's been a flattening of individual style for me in a lot of ways. But one of the things about New York, you had to have something to contribute to the party. And you weren't popular because of how many likes you had. You were popular because you were unique, you had your own voice, and you contributed to the party by the way you dressed, how you talked, your sense of humor, if you could withstand shade or anything like that. I know we're going far away from what I wore when I first DJ, but I digress. But anyway,
No, it's
but Kamali,
fascinating.
and
Kamali.
that's what I used to do.
She's still going, and I used to wear Kamali as well. She really gave you a good figure.
She gives everyone a good figure.
Yeah,
Kamali
she's incredible.
To me, she's one of the most. She should be in the pantheon with the greats, because I mean, she's really done so many innovative things: swimwear, denim, the sleeping bag coat. Which, by the way, she was dating Ian Schrager, and she created that coat for Steve Rubell to stand outside to pick people to come in. So there's that history of the sleeping bag coat that she made for Steve. I've gotten to meet with her in the last couple of years and connect with her, and I just love. It's so interesting when you talk to women designers or female identified designers, because they take so much more into consideration about how women actually live and feel in clothes. And she's just the bathing suit, and bathing suit is outerwear. You could wear a bathing suit to the club. I mean, so all of this, we were talking earlier today about, packing for travel and fashion. And I tell you, I wear bodysuits and jeans because as much as I love so many conceptual ideas, I don't have the lifestyle to pack all of these things in luggages. I'm normally in 5 cities in a weekend and different climates, and I can't even wait for a bag. So I have to, pack lightly. And I realized that a bodysuit can be dressed up or down, jeans, a skirt, leather jacket. I mean, you can get away with murder in a bodysuit. And I think that's the one must-have item. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, but you can get through life with a bodysuit. That's my 2 cents.
That's a very good tip.
Yeah.
Do you think hang-ups and insecurities about our bodies are catalysts for being inventive about coming up with a good look?
I think that's a really interesting question, because do you think the insecurities about our bodies, we come up with looks? Is that the question that you're saying?
Yeah, it's like sort of, I've had so many insecurities about my body, almost kind of eclipsing that I can see myself as a total person rather than a series of bits. And it's part of, I think, maybe why I became a designer, because that was a way of...
acceptance?
No, I don't think I'll ever have that, but a kind of way of handling it.
Right.
And then also I sort of understood that if you have a good look going, it stops you, or it can free you from being overly self-conscious. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
So that sounds like liberation.
Fashion liberation.
Well, the things that I've come to realize is that, I call myself fashion adjacent, basically. And I was terribly bullied as a kid, a queer black kid on the south side of Chicago, and not really having formed my identity and trying on different expressions to find out who I am. And I think having a look sort of gives you courage to navigate the world. Mm-hmm. And it can also be a form of armor as well.
Yeah, totally.
I think we're so, through advertising, especially post-World War II advertising, a lot of us are shamed if we're not a certain body type, or if we don't have certain features, and especially someone like myself, being a black trans woman of color, I've never had, I call it mirrors of affirmation. And sort of, you can't see what you can't be what you can't see. Mm-hmm. And so I for so many years tried to be so many different things because I wanted to be seen. And at the end of the day, I really realized that through a lot of trial and error, who was I dressing for? Mm-hmm. Was I dressing for the male gaze? Was I dressing for protection? Was I dressing for self-expression? But I found out a lot of my insecurities were actually my strengths. The things that I were bullied for or laughed at or not accepted for were the things that made me unique. So I just decided to put a fucking gold star on it. And also, your insecurities shift.
Yeah.
Your body shifts, your taste shifts, your eye shifts. What I liked 5 years ago, I wouldn't be caught dead in. I've also learned to edit. The longer I walk the planet, it seems the more clarity I have of my shifts, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Because you said a lot of beautiful things come from oppression and resistance.
Yes.
And
yeah.
What have been your what doesn't kill you makes you stronger moments?
That's a very layered question because there's so many intersectionalities that I navigate on a daily basis, and walking out my front door is a form of protest no matter what I'm wearing. But, you know, being oppressed for race or gender or sexual orientation. And so I realized that I wasn't going to make everybody happy. I couldn't make everybody happy. So the only person that I could make happy was myself. And to focus on that love affair and focus on that energy, because someone's not going to like me because of the color of my skin. Someone's not going to like me because of my gender. Someone's not going to like the music I play on a certain night. And another thing too, being in romantic relationships, and I think we do all of these things to attract the right partner or to, you know, someone to like us or whatever. And I realized that people fall out of love with you. People's attitude towards you change. And the only person that you should be getting dressed for or the joyous dressing is for yourself. And if someone else likes it, great. I love this quote from Paris is Burning. If you shoot an arrow and it goes real high, hooray for you.
Because you also talked about The Artist's Way, the self-help
Oh, I love The
book.
Artist's Way, yeah.
And I wonder
who
introduced you to that? And
who introduced me to that was my friends that were into the leather community in New York, and they did sex work.
Oh, really?
Honey, wait till the book comes out. I have so many New York stories. And I love my sex worker friends. They're like, I learned the most valuable lessons about life and sex through my sex worker friends. And so they turned me into 2 books, The Artist's Way and The 4 Agreements.
Oh, yeah.
The 4 Agreements is another great book.
I read some of that because I saw it in a gangster film where one of the gangsters was saying, I can't do this because in the 4 Agreements.
Exactly.
Do you remember that? It was so funny. But with The Artist's Way, what was your favorite exercise?
3 pages of journaling every morning.
Yeah.
And I still do it to this day.
Do you? Yeah.
I still journal. I don't feel like my day is complete without me writing down dreams, hopes, fears, insecurities, but also documenting my life. And I'll go back to those journals and I realized, you know, it's great to see how far I've come. It's also areas that my blind spots that I still need working on. And it's a documentation of me, for me. So I still write my 3. I have a couple of journals. I have my creative journals about ideas, and then I have the Artist's Way journal where I write my 3 pages every day. And I combine that with the four agreements. I think the hardest thing about the 4 agreements is not to take anything personal because it's not about you, but also be careful with your word because words are very powerful and we're all languaged into experience. And so, I love The Artist's Way. I recommend, this is not a plug, I'm not getting a kickback, but the 4 agreements and The Artist's Way are the 2 books you should definitely have. And by the way, never fuck anyone that doesn't have books in their house.
Good tip.
That to me is a deal breaker. Yeah.
I used to like in The Artist's Way, the artist's date when you went to see something on your own and kind of, you know, just had to concentrate and focus and be connected to some kind of creative thing.
Yeah.
It was a really good lesson.
It's a great lesson.
I loved it, yeah. I'm so interested that it was sex workers who were practicing The Artist's Way. It's like just such a wonderful story.
I find, you know, there's a lot of argument about how subculture doesn't exist anymore because of the internet, right? That we're all so globally connected and But I was recently, I went to a Folsom Street Fair last year, and I have to say the last frontier for me of subculture is body autonomy. The trans community, gender is the last frontier because people are mixing up ways of dressing and expressing body autonomy. And the kink community, I mean, you know, there's a lot of great style ideas with body modification and sexual expression and leather and fur and latex and just how people dress to express themselves sexually, but it's also liberating. So I'm all about, and especially a lot what people aren't talking about are trans women and how that has had such a powerful influence on culture, especially the body modification, the big asses and the big tits and the lips and the hair and the nails and all of that was super, and when you did sex work, was this hypersexualized version of femininity.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to call it toxic femininity, just like you have toxic masculinity, but this super pumped up version of femininity. And, you know, that went from trans sex workers to the strip club, which is also a form of sex work. And that influenced hip hop culture, and hip hop culture afforded rap culture. Rap culture is now mainstream. And so there's this lineage of that going on. And literally what happens in the street always ends up on the runway in some form or another through nail culture and lace fronts and all the things that we're doing now. I mean, I'm really great friends with, you know, Amanda Lepore, and, you know, 20 years ago, that was a radical thing. And now she's like, that's the nail tech at the salon. That's the grocery store. I mean, that's just so normalized. Or even Pete Burns was so ahead of the curve. You know, that has influenced culture today. And so there's so much intersectionality between sex work and pop culture and trans culture and queer culture. None of it is separate.
It's interesting what you were saying about how the kink culture is coming into, and all like the things I really like are those pet masks and the ears. Yeah. And there's this brand called Fleet Ilya. Have you ever?
I love Fleet Ilya.
Oh God, it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's amazing. She's amazing. Yeah. I mean, Fleet Ilya is incredible, and she's been doing that for so long.
It's really, really elegant. I mean, it's just the most beautifully designed. I'm dying for one of those ears things. But
I mean, they're so great. I mean, there's no difference between, I guess, pup play and Berlin. I saw a lot of pup play in Berlin.
It's very cute seeing people do that.
Why not? I love the Diana Vreeland quote, why not?
Yeah, she certainly got it.
Yeah.
And you described walking into a club in New York for the first time and another trans woman saying to you, you belong in a skirt.
Yes.
And what happened with your wardrobe after that moment? I mean, it's such a big, amazing deal.
What wardrobe? I was broke. I didn't have a wardrobe. I had clothes, but I did not have a wardrobe. Like a lot of people when I first moved to New York, this is a true story. So I've always been a DJ, but there's been a life lived before Honey Dijon, okay? You know, I was a hotel phone operator. I got fired from that job because, I was always late because I worked the midnight shift. And I worked the midnight shift specifically so I could club so it wouldn't change my algorithm. But I was always late. Every job I had, I'm a disaster in corporate environments. So I got fired. And so then I took the money that I had, they gave me severance pay, and I moved to Washington, D.C. for a year. And I lived in D.C. for a year, and I used to manage the mental health benefits for the city's employee. Can you believe it? It was mental health. So what that means is I used to negotiate inpatient and outpatient rates for people of the city of DC. And I used to take the Greyhound bus up to New York City, $40 each way, because I was broke. And I used to sleep on a friend's floor. And the best days of my life, I wouldn't change them for a world. And that was my introduction into New York. And like a lot of trans women, I was a drag artist before I transitioned. And so when I was performing, I walked into a club and my community saw me before I saw myself. Mm-hmm. And what that meant was you belong in a skirt was basically saying you're one of us and we see you and we love you and we appreciate you. And back then, before we had all the trans visibility that we have today, you know, just think it's only been 10 years since Laverne Cox was on the cover of Time magazine, The Tipping Point. And I've known Laverne for years. You know, we came up in New York. You know, we all went to Stingy Lulu's and Patricia Fields and Lucky Chang's. And so it was still pretty underground. And the girls told you where to go get your first shot, where to go in Mexico to get your surgeries. Because then, unlike today, where there's all of these practitioners that do all the facial feminization surgeries and all the trans confirmation surgeries, I'm literally Frankenstein, because you would try to find people or health practitioners that weren't transphobic, because there's a lot of transphobia in the medical world. Wow. And so my community really saw me and helped me. And there was also this place called Lee's Mardi Gras in the Meatpacking District, which is now Gucci, on the corner of 14th and 13th and Washington. Girl, we could go this part. You sure it's only an hour? I have stories. Lee's Mardi Gras was, you know, it was where you went to get things. Mm-hmm. And so they were, my sisters told me where to go, what to do, how to do it. And they saw me. And that was the beginning of me becoming, you know, I know this might be a controversial thing. I think, you know, the word transition is kind of controversial for me because we're all in transition. None of us mm-hmm. stays stagnant in life. So I always like to say walking into your truth.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think for all of us, walking into our truths is the most important thing that we can do. And so when my community saw me, that was the beginning of me getting a wardrobe.
Must have been such an exciting moment, like just to be almost an ingenue and someone seeing you like that and telling you something and then having this kind of epiphany.
Yeah, awakening. Mm. Yeah, it was great. And so that's when I started to...
do you remember what
sample sales
skirt you got?
Sample sales,
right.
sample sales, friends. And I was really lucky because, you know, how I got into fashion was through music and through DJing. And at that time in New York, you know, it was so many fashion designers went to clubs that I played at. And I started DJing with Visionaire, Stephen Gann and Cecilia Dean and James Kiliardos, and they used to invite me to DJ the Visionaire events. And then, you know, I became really great friends with Narciso Rodriguez, and he would invite me to DJ his events, and then I would sort of do CFDA awards. And then I met Kim Jones in New York through the designer Andre Walker. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Kim. And we all know that he's gone on to do some incredible things with Louis Vuitton and Dior. And so he invited me to start working on the soundtracks with him. And then Riccardo Tisci invited me to DJ his after parties for when he was at Givenchy. And so club culture for me has never been about entertainment. It's always been about a laboratory of creative exchange and ideas and community, creative communities. Through art, music, and fashion. And so that was how I sort of became a part of the fashion world, was through these incredible people.
Do you find there are certain clothes that make you feel better when you're feeling down? Is there anything? Yes. Really? Well, yeah, because I really have that. So
leather. I always feel great if I have. So another one of my style icons is Keith Haring. I love the high tops and the baggy jeans and the big leather jacket. So I'm a bit of a tomboy in how I dress, which a lot of my trans sisters will probably want to kill me for.
It's nice.
But I don't think there's one way. I think there's a lot of, I don't shy away from the masculine sides of myself. And I think it's a part of the whole. And I think women can be, there's not one way to be a woman and there's not one way to be a trans woman. And I think I embrace all of it, and I don't want to erase my past, and it's part of who I am, and I accept all of it. And so what makes me, when I'm down, there's nothing that feels better than like a big oversized leather jacket and a pair of jeans and a pair of high tops. Lately I've been wearing before they were Nike high tops, what I love is Isabel Marant high tops.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just pair that with a pair of baggy jeans. And my jean of choice, they no longer exist, but I try to find vintage ones, are Gerbeaus, Martin and Francois Gerbeau from the 80s.
Oh, those
I
are
love
amazing.
that 80s balloon shape.
Yeah.
And I love sort of like oversized vintage Averex leather jackets. I always love that hint of New York street. So I always go to Orchard Street and try to find these sort of 80s blouson oversized leather jackets and a bodysuit and Vasta and a piece of gold jewelry and diamonds. Did I say diamonds? If anyone is listening to this, I like diamonds. But also what really lifts my spirits, what I wear every day is perfume.
Oh, that's so
interesting.
interesting.
I think I wear perfume to bed. I have pillow scents, room scents, incense. I have 6 different candles going at the same time. And I think wearing perfume is probably one of the most, I have oils, and it's the one thing, if I'm feeling down, I take a scented bath with like, Santa Maria Novella has this really great rose bath oil. Because for me, brand. Style is not what you wear, it's how you live. And so clothing is just another part of that. And so what lifts my spirits is perfume and a really nice pair of underwear.
Oh, really? Do you like good underwear?
Oh, my God. My mother would, that's another thing. If I'm in a car crash, the underwear is on point. But a great pair of leather pants and underwear and perfume makes me feel really good. Also with the high tops and the baggy jeans and the
I think that's a great mix, the kind of tomboy with the great underwear. I mean, it's just can't be better, really.
I love underwear. I really love like really great sheer see-through nasty underwear, a pair of old nasty sheer sexy underpants.
Do you ever go to Yasmin Aslami in Paris? She does like Guy Bourdin sheer, amazing colors.
I mean,
oh my God.
I quite like Asian Provocateur makes really sexy underwear. Yeah. I like keyhole underwear.
Ooh.
With a little heart in the back. Just in case. I'll let your imagination go where you want with that one. And crotchless underwear is always a vibe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite makeup artist? Because you're big on you just come from Selfridges and you said you bought all sorts of great stuff. And I wondered who you liked the most.
I have so many favorite makeup artists. I'm sort of a skin person, more of a makeup person. Like, I love skin. I'm obsessed with skin. I spend more money on skin so I don't have to wear makeup. But I love so many different makeup artists. Pat McGrath is a genius. But I also love Way Bandy. And there was an artist called Topolino.
Oh, Topolino was incredible.
Topolino was genius.
Yeah.
I also loved Linda Mason.
I don't know Linda Mason.
Linda Mason, she's incredible. She did a lot of makeup for one of my favorite fashion designers, Stephen Sprouse.
Oh God, I used to know Stephen Sprouse.
Julian Deese, but I think Julian Deese does hair.
He's a hair.
He does hair.
Guy, yeah.
Francois Nars is an incredible artist. Those would be my favorite. There's, I can't say there's just one, but there's a few.
And whose look are you loving at the moment?
Whose look am I loving at the moment? Wow, that's
sorry.
Which moment? That moment shifts.
Who springs into your mind right now? I know we've talked about Cher already.
Whose look? Well, the person that I'm loving the most at the moment is Doechii.
Oh, yes.
I'm so inspired by everything she is and what she stands for, her music, her voice. Doechii for me right now is just turning it out. But I also love Moa Lola. I just love the girl that she presents. This unapologetically fierce female black girl I love. But I would always say oh my God, who is my style icon? You can't do that to me. It's impossible to do that to me. Who's looking for my loving at the moment? Doechii. A Lauren Hutton in an Avedon photo with a bucket hat. But my favorite movie of all time for looks, American Gigolo.
Wow.
And actually, the Lauren bag, Bottega Veneta, because she's carrying a Bottega Veneta bag in that movie.
Is she?
And they actually named a bag called Lauren after her from that character in the movie.
Ooh,
from
I didn't
American
know
Gigolo.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you fancy someone and don't like what they're wearing, does it kill your attraction to them?
I make them take it off.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can change a person's style, but you can't change a person's personality.
No.
So, choose your battles. If someone, it depends on the body and the clothes. It depends on the laughter. Because I often find what's bad taste can become fashionable. It's no taste that turns me off. When something is like no taste. When it's just like shapeless, nothing going on there. But so that's a case-by-case scenario.
I think that's a very diplomatic approach.
Yes. Clothes come off, personalities don't.
Yeah. Also, as soon as you have a kind of blanket rule, it always changes. And then it's so restrictive having a blanket rule about anything.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes it is literally like, it's like eating something you don't like. Your appetite disappears and you just have to leave or have to get out. But also,
I've tasted things before that I didn't like and learned to love them.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. But also, I think like with most, I don't want to generalize, but I think most women have to build the version of the partner they want to be with. Besides, like I said to you earlier, I've been the interior decorator, the stylist, the psychiatrist, the maid, the chef, the sex worker. That's what normally happens. But does that change? I also think if someone's style that I'm attracted to is off-putting, I try to zoom in on the part that I don't like and question what it is about that part that I don't like. Because that's more a reflection about me than them.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, it's true, actually. It's a really good point. Because it's about sort of self-reflected self-consciousness, isn't it? It's like it reminds you of something that you feel shame, or speaking for myself, some sort of mortification about myself that I'm projecting onto them, and then somehow I'm making a lot of difficulty where maybe there isn't any. And
also those 3 a.m. goggles can make a big difference. When the lights come up, when the lights are off, it's like, oh, ooh. Yeah. And I've lived in cities where there have been complete beauties, like beauties with the worst style. And it's just like, I can change the look, but not, so it's case by case. Yeah.
And you've been quoted as saying designer bags can change lives. And I wondered what you meant by that.
What did I say?
You said designer bags can change lives.
Designer bags can change lives. Well, it could make you poor. Especially these days. I can't believe I said designer bags can change lives. I probably should have said designer shoes can change lives.
I was wondering because I read that when you came home with designer bags, your mother started saying, "Whoa, maybe this DJ job is actually a good job." And I wondered if it was that.
Okay, well, that was status signaling.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what I meant by that. So, my parents didn't think DJing was a real job. It was like, especially when I was struggling and on the come up, right? Complaining about, because as an up-and-coming DJ, it's not glamorous. There have been times when I wasn't paid at the end of the night or had to chase my fees or, there were many times when I didn't know how I was going to pay the rent or whatever. And so when things started to shift for me and I was able to have these sort of status things, it's like, oh, so you're doing okay. So sometimes these status symbols can change the perception of you and your success. So in that way, And sometimes, at the airport, if you have that bag, they don't ask you what class you're sitting in, or
so true.
You know what I mean? Or like, when you go shopping, it's like, oh, people treat you a certain way. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference on the person inside, but sometimes it's nice to have that flex. Like, yes, bitch, correct. This is absolutely right. You should speak to me this way. And yes, Mom, I did okay.
I know.
So it can change lives sometimes.
I suppose it's hard for people to recognize whether someone has money or not by
especially
clothes
in today's world,
now. And then, so those are good indicators, aren't they?
Yes, that's a good status signal. The bag and the shoe and the coat. I also find if you have on a really nice pair of sunglasses and a really expensive bag, that can also...
Oh God, you've got so many things in your
Honey,
armory.
I travel for a living. I know how this shit works. I know how to get the girls to give me what I need when I need it. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite bag at the moment?
I have a couple of favorite bags at the moment, but I've been buying a lot of vintage Balenciaga Nicola Ghesquière bags from the early 2000s. So those are my favorite ones at the moment.
With the tassels.
I have the corduroy satchel bags.
Ooh.
I love those. So my favorite bags at the moment are my early. I probably shouldn't be. They're really quite hard to find, so I don't mind telling people. But that's my favorite bag. I love my vintage Coach bags from the 70s. I love... I really like clothing connected to culture and specific periods of time. So I usually try to buy bags connected to a certain design era that I like, or a certain moment that I like. But I would have to say my early 2000
I do love a suede bag. I think it's just kind of having a suede bag and a suede coat. I just love that throwback to that 70s thing. I just find it so disarming, and you don't see so much suede anymore. But
no, you don't see much suede, and I love my Carlos Falci bags, which was a mixture of like leather and snakeskin and suede. So I normally look for things like that, but I have my bags, so some when I travel with that, let the girls know what time it is.
That's very good.
I have some Chanels and some things. And,
wow.
When I have to pull out the big guns, Kim Jones has been very generous with me with some really lovely Fendi bags and Dior bags. And, I have my looks.
But you also have this incredible language. You're so witty and high classy. And I wondered, do you read a lot? Have you always had that? I do read a lot. Yeah.
But also it comes from, social mobility, just being able to move in so many different social circles.
Well, when I met you for the first time, we were just like hanging around outside a Dior thing.
Yes, the Dior thing. And at the Dior for Kim, right.
And you were so like devastatingly witty.
Oh, thank
and I
you.
just felt completely... I have to know more about you. I have to hear you talk for a long time. And it's just a thing I find utterly disarming. And your just wit and your scope and your swiftness was fantastic. And
well, that comes from having to, live on the streets in New York. Like I said, in order to make yourself be seen or heard in New York, you had to have a witty repartee, or you had to have a sense of humor, or... that if you want to seduce me, having a sense of sarcasm and wit will get you a long way. Fuck the clothes. If you can make me laugh and have something funny to say. But I love language. I love words. I love the words of the street. I love proper English. I love... One of my favorite people to hear talk is Charlie Porter, because he always talks about humans. But I love the Queen's English, and I love the language of trans women. I just love self-expression through language. But I also know how to cut a bitch really quickly if need be, with what I have to with the tongue. I'm really comfortable with who I am, and I don't switch. I don't code switch. I'm the same person. I could speak to the president of a company as I can speak to anyone, in the hood, or urban settings, as they say, because the hood can come across a little racist. So urban settings.
God, it's so bland though, urban settings.
What?
It's so bland, that term, compared to like
Oh,
the street,
God,
the hood,
it's
the
so
vine.
bloody blind. But I just love language, and I love words, and I love people, and I love talking shit. No one talks shit, and no one kikis, and well, my friend do, but I love a good carry, as they say. And for those of you don't know what carry means, a good carrying on, and a good laughter, but a good carry and a good kiki.
The code of language is so intriguing.
Yeah,
and
the language of subculture.
What I wanted to ask you about is your new collection called Honey Fucking Dijon.
Honey Fucking Dijon, yes.
With Dover Street Market.
With Dover Street Market, Paris, yes.
Can you give me any insights about,
well,
is it clothes, accessories? Is it any clues?
I'm basically using clothing to communicate culture. What I like to celebrate, and what I saw that was missing, was a celebration of, like I said earlier in the conversation, was how I discovered fashion was through community and subculture. So I wanted to use clothing. I love the blank canvas of a t-shirt. I love the blank canvas of a scarf. I love how people dress in clubs. I love the mix of tailoring and activewear. I wanted to use the flyers, the music, the colors of house music culture, of queer culture, of trans culture, of things that weren't so binary or aspirational, but more inspirational. And it was a vehicle for me to express my experience life in clubs and music. And I've gotten to do that. And Dover Street Market has helped me facilitate that vision. And I've gotten to work with the archive of Keith Haring and Jean-Michel Basquiat and Robert Mapplethorpe. And I've used the work that was mostly related to their relationships to music and clubbing and sex. And so that's what Honey Fucking Dijon is. It's basically a celebration and using clothing as a communication of that culture that I loved and come from.
Sounds amazing.
It's non-gender specific. Actually, it's multi-gender, whatever that means. But it's for anybody that connects through clubs and music. And so that I find a lot of in fashion, there's so much cosplay going on. And so I wanted to put the people that I actually, if all the clothing that I shot on are from my community and from clubs. And I really wanted to celebrate those people, and not in a performative way, but in a real celebratory way. And all of these people, and like I said, my favorite time is from 1969 to 1981. Well, my favorite time in New York was the late 70s and the early 80s, and when all of these worlds collided. And so I was just basically wanted to celebrate that time, not in a nostalgic way, but in a critical way, and that speaks to now and speaks to the kids today. And so that's what Honey Fucking Dijon is.
Sounds great. I mean, will it be ongoing, or is it?
It is. I took a pause because post-pandemic, I really needed to recalibrate and refigure what that was and what it is. And now I'm going to restart it again. And I have some exciting collaborations coming up. I don't want to spill the tea.
Oh, gosh.
So some other child can come and snatch the IP. We're going to keep it on the low.
So
but yeah,
exciting.
there's some exciting things. It's going to start again very, very, very soon. And I'm really excited to do that. She's a multi-hyphenate, this one, laying on your sofa.
Gosh, there was one other expression that you used that I really loved when you said, keep your shit Gucci.
Keep your shit Gucci.
I loved that. And does that ever change? Does it ever stop being Gucci, or does it become Valentino, or does it
keep it one, keep it 100.
I love it.
No. I think there's this word authenticity that is thrown around so much. It's also, like another word that is thrown, like legendary, is thrown around so easily these days. But I just want to keep it honest. I think that's the word, honest. So keeping it Gucci is keeping it honest and real and true to you, and inviting people along for your ride. I mean, everything that I do is just a proposition, not a dictate. So it's just I'm sharing things that I find exciting, and I'm inviting you to share in that excitement with me.
Well,
as simple as that.
Keeping your shit honey fucking
Keeping
Dijon,
your shit
maybe.
100% Gucci.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
honey.
so welcome. I feel like there's so much we can talk about. Like,
Yeah,
I'm just,
I want to come to your house and look at
oh my God, you have to come to
art.
my archive. I'm building a library in London. I have an archive.
So you're staying here for a bit?
I'm staying here.
Great.
Well, have you seen what's happening? I'm staying here for a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm staying here for a bit. London feels home. And we're going to keep it 100% Gucci up in here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on Fashion Neurosis. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Peace.